Hey, what's up, Zoners? Today, we will be looking into the future. No lottery numbers, just fantasy football quarterbacks for 2024. Hey, man, we have them all ranked. We even have them with tiers. You know I love tiers, and not just the tiers of my enemies. If that sounds interesting to you, hold on for 7 seconds. Hey, what's up, Zoners? This is Tyler, Big Turd Ward, and Banjo, the Dawg, coming at you live from my garage. And this is the Fantasy Red Zone. We threw together a table for today's episode. I'm going to be sharing that with you right now. All right, let's start off by explaining this table. The first column is the quarterbacks. We have Josh Allen right there. The next column is his ranking for next year's draft. So 2024 Fantasy Football Draft. My first quarterback is Josh Allen. Hey, here we go. Here is the points per game. That is the next column for this last season. So he had the most points per game, ranked number 1 there. And hey, dude, the last column is what I have for tiers for next year's draft. He's in a tier all of his own. Man, he scored 2 more fantasy points per game than any other quarterback. All the other quarterbacks are separated by less than a point. And here we go, dude. Josh Allen leading them by over 2 points. And this year, Josh Allen rushed for 15 rushing touchdowns. Dude, that is tied with Jalen Hurts. Last year, Josh Allen only had 7 rushing touchdowns. He more than doubled it this year. And one thing I know is that Josh Allen is a one-man show, dude. Did you see Stephon Diggs? He didn't do anything. Hey, man, Dalton Kincaid didn't really do anything much at the end of the year either. He can throw the ball to James Cook 10 times a game if he has to, and he will rush the ball around the goal line. He will continue to be a top quarterback next season. He is the best bet to remain a top 3 quarterback for next season. That's why I have him ranked number 1. Next up, Jalen Hurts, man. I have him ranked number 2 here for next season. And guess what, dude? He finished as the number 2 fantasy points per game quarterback this season. So I like fantasy points per game because, people get injured and do not finish the year. So at least you get to see what they were getting when they were playing, just like Anthony Richardson. We will talk about him in a little bit. But, dude, Jalen Hurts, number 2 in that category. And he kicks off the next tier, so tier number 2 for next season. Jalen Hurts, 15 rushing touchdowns. We just talked about that. That is more than he had last season. Last season was his breakout season, killed it for everybody. He had 13 rushing touchdowns last year. Dude, he also had 23 passing touchdowns this year. Last year he had 22. So his depth at target did go down quite a bit. So not as explosive as last season, man, but way more turnovers this year as well. But other than that, he was super productive fantasy-wise. That did not translate to real-life football. He did not do that well. Everybody's trying to figure out what's wrong with Jalen Hurts. Well, fantasy-wise, dude, I own him in one of my leagues, my main league. I dominated the year, and he killed it for me every single week. Jalen Squirts was sick, that one time, and I had to start somebody else because I did not trust it. Thought he was going to be squirting all over Seattle. Well, guess what, dude? He played that week and got over 20 points. So Jalen Hurts, man, coming through huge this year. And he's going to be running quarterback number 2 next year. All right, next up, I do want to talk about Joe Flacco. He is the number 3 quarterback on fantasy points per game basis this season. But who the hell knows where he's going to be playing next year? So, yeah, dude, I'm not going to rank him until we know. Next up, Lamar Jackson. I have him ranked 3rd in next year's draft. He was 4th in fantasy football points per game this year, and that is with a super slow start. That is with also only 5 rushing touchdowns this season. We just talked about Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen, the 2 quarterbacks ranked ahead of him, had fucking 15 touchdowns, man. And here we go, Lamar Jackson. This is good for Lamar Jackson. His floor might be this year. Next year, if he gets some rushing touchdowns again, oh my God, man, he might kill it even more. He has potential to be a number 1 quarterback next season, but still I have Josh Allen in a tier of his own because I have to. All right, anyways, he is rounding out the 2nd tier for next year, leading off the 3rd tier. And I am putting points per game next to my ranks just to show you that I am taking, it's probably a big risk. This might be way wrong, but hey, man, when it comes to Joe Burrow, who is my quarterback number 4 for next season, you got to give him respect, man. I mean, come on. 3 straight 22-plus points games before the injury. So it is still there. T. Higgins, I think, is on a contract year. I think T. Higgins is going to be gone. But, dude, they have Tyler Boyd and Chase Brown. He was catching screens for like 50 yards, man, from Jake Browning. And Jamar Chase still. So, hey, This and plus Zach Taylor, I think, is a lot better than what people are giving him credit for. He made Jake Browning look amazing. Next up, man, my big Turd award, if you watched that episode, went to Patrick Mahomes. I have him ranked 5th for next year behind Joe Burrow. He actually had the 12th highest fantasy points per game for quarterbacks this year, man. So top 12, that's it for Mahomes. And we drafted him pretty much number 1 overall for quarterbacks last year. He was the biggest miss. I have him in the middle of tier 3. Dude, Patrick Mahomes, I mean, is it going to get any better for him? He gets Rashee Rice in the second year. Kelsey's another year older. They don't use their pass-catching running backs anyways. They need to retool that offensive line, which they have already had to do before. They're paying Patrick Mahomes $1 billion. So, man, Patrick Mahomes, until I see it, he might not be elite again anytime soon because he needs a total retool and some wide receivers up in that motherfucker. Next up, Justin Herbert. He is ranked 6th for me for next year's draft. He finished, dude, 11th in points per game this year. He had a couple games where he had to leave injured early, so a couple incomplete games that kind of knocked him down. Dude, Justin Herbert, though, let's see. Quarterback number 3 for the first 4 weeks of the season. I remember Jason had him, and he was quarterback number 3, and he didn't even want Justin Herbert, and I was all about Justin Herbert to begin the year with. But dude, Mike Williams went down. So many injuries. It was ridiculous. He kept on getting injured himself. Eckler was a shell of himself when he was there. So with a new coach, with healthy players again, dude, I think that Justin Herbert will be a top 5 quarterback, but we have him ranked a little bit outside of that. Next up, Brock Purdy. I have him ranked 7th for next year. He was 8th in fantasy points per game this season. So I'm ranking him pretty much aligning with his fantasy points per game this season. And he was one of our biggest misses on this list last year. We had him ranked super low going into this year. Dude, finished as number 8 fantasy points per game. That's amazing. Dude, he had a stretch where he scored 20 plus fantasy points 6 out of 7 games. So when everybody is healthy on this team, this guy is in the bank, man. 20 plus points. Last year, he was only getting like 200 yards a game and maybe a touchdown or 2. That went up to like 300 yards a game and 2+ touchdowns per game almost. He is kicking off tier 4 for me next year. All right, here we go. Dak Prescott. I am probably disrespecting Dak just looking at his rank right now next to his fantasy points per game rank for this season. So I have him ranked 8th. Dude, he scored the 3rd highest fantasy points per game for quarterbacks this year. So am I disrespecting him? I did it last year. I'm probably going to do it again this year. I just don't know if it's going to happen again, man. I mean, dude, he had that stretch that was amazing. But let's see, 3-week stretch at the end of season, only scoring 19 points or fewer, one of which was of only 7 points. So when you look at his points, he gets them in bunches. And when they blow out teams, it's kind of a 50-50. He might get a lot of points. He might not get many points at all. So he's not that consistent quarterback that I want. All right, guys, I drafted this guy in every single league. AR-15, I am most excited about this guy. I'm going to be drafting him in every single league next season. Go buy his sports cards, man. This guy's like Don Russ Optic. Holo cards are only like $30 right now, so check that shit out. Make some money. I have him ranked number 9th going into next season. I might have that higher depending on his health going into next season. And then, yeah, dude, 14th in fantasy points per game. But if you would have taken out, because he only played 4 games, if you would have taken out his like 4-point game where he got injured immediately, he'd be like number 2 in fantasy points per game. This guy has Shane Steichen as his offensive coordinator. Dude, Justin Herbert killed it. Had his best season with Shane Steichen. You see what's happening to him now. Then he went over to Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts had his best season. Dude, now they have Anthony Richardson. I was talking so much shit about Anthony Richardson, and then he went to Shane Steichen. I was like, I better shut up. And man, dude, the first 4 weeks, oh my God. I was thinking about keeping him and trading Jalen Hurts. So this guy has so much potential. He could literally be quarterback number 1 next year, and I have him ranked number 9, man. So value next year, Anthony Richardson. All right, next up, dude, CJ Stroud. He's got 2 amazing weapons. Now, I mean, if Tank Dell comes back, dude, we know what he can do. This guy rips long balls. That is his specialty. And in fantasy football, that's what we want, man. But, dude, he does not have the same rushing prowess of Anthony Richardson. So I have Stroud ranked number 10 overall, top 10 quarterback. He was 10th in fantasy points per game, so that aligns even though he was injured, we're not counting those games. He is in the fourth tier. Fourth tier is the most amount of quarterbacks in. So I have it all the way from Purdy all the way down to Cousins. But yeah, CJ Stroud, man, I am more excited about Richardson, but CJ Stroud is almost there for me. And then here we go. Next up, dude, my fantasy quarterback MVP for the 2023 season, Jordan Love, man. I am disrespecting him again. I have him ranked 11th going into next year. He finished the year as ranked 6th in fantasy points per game. So that's almost, dude, I'm like, that's like 5 spots I'm ranking him out of what he just proved he could do this year. But man, I want to see it again because I am so pumped up on Stroud and Richardson, and I have to put Purdy ahead of him and Dak ahead of him. Then after that, what are you gonna do, man? So Jordan Love, you are just a victim of circumstances. I am sorry. Then here we go. Next up, man, Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins was killing it when everybody was healthy, dude. Hawkinson, Addison, and Jefferson. Holy shit! Holy shit! I do not know how you don't throw for 4,000 plus yards and 30 plus touchdowns in this offense, man. So I have him ranked 12th going into next year. Dude, he was 7th in fantasy points per game this year. So value next year is Cousins. So try to get Richardson, Cousins, something like that. Oh my God. And he is rounding out the 4th tier for me, which means we're going on to the beginning of the next tier 5, Justin Fields. I have him ranked 13th going into next year. And guess what, dude? He ranked 13th in fantasy points per game this year. So if he stays on the Bears, I pretty much have him ranked here. If he goes to the Falcons with a new head coach, I will probably have him ahead of Love. Okay, so that's probably what a lot depends for Justin Fields on the off season. The next up, man, Kyler Murray. I picked up Kyler Murray super early. You did too if you watched this show. Hey, I have him ranked 14th going into next year. He was 9th in fantasy football points per game this year. He came back with a lot of injured weapons, man, and did pretty goddamn well. So Hollywood Brown was injured with a heel. Michael Wilson was perpetually injured all season long. And then Trey McBride, I think, was coming off an injury as well. Got old-ass James Conner back here. And, dude, Kyler Murray is a good fucking quarterback, man. He's a good real-life quarterback. He's a fucking good fantasy football quarterback. Kyler Murray, man. In my tier 5. Next up, Jared Goff. We were super high on Jared Goff last year. That was one of our biggest hits on this list. I have him ranked 15th because, man, all these people ahead of him just have so much potential, man. And until Jameson Williams shows me something, I think that Goff has hit his limit. I think Goff right now is like pretty much what you're going to get out of him, which is great. He should be really a top 12 quarterback. I have him ranked 15th. And he was 15th in fantasy points per game this year, so I have him ranked aligned with that. And one more we have to add with Goff. I don't know how you can't put this guy with Goff, especially with the emergence of Puka Nacua. Dude, Kyron Williams takes screens all day long. Matthew Stafford. We got a goddamn Sean McVay coaching his ass off out here. I have him ranked 16th, and he finished 18th in fantasy points per game. And he rounds out the tier 5, which is the second to last tier for me. We're doing 20 quarterbacks today. And then here we go, dude. Trevor Lawrence, the top of the next tier. What happened to Trevor Lawrence, man? I do not know. The offensive line lost their left tackle to Kansas City, but Kansas City's not doing too great with him either. But still, man, that was their best offensive lineman. So they need to retool this offensive line, and Trevor Lawrence will be back. Dude, I'm ranking him 17th, which you think would be low, dude. He was 17th in fantasy points per game this year, so that's not low at all. Next up, Baker Mayfield. I was like, oh my God, I'm disrespecting Baker Mayfield again. But man, I've got him ranked 18th, and he was 20th in fantasy points per game this year. So he had a good stretch at the end of the season, but he still rears his ugly head going into Carolina in some certain situations. He's like, you got to start him with good matchups only. He's more of a streaming quarterback, so not a full-time starter. And then Aaron Rodgers up next. Got him ranked 19th. He is not ranked on fantasy points per game. I don't know how to even judge Aaron Rodgers and this offense, man. Like, they need to retool this offensive line, or it's going to be a shit show again. He could just throw a ton to Garrett Wilson and a bunch of screens to Breece Hall, but I need to see this in action, man. I cannot put him ahead of Baker Mayfield. I can't do it. Then lastly, Tua. Man, Tua, he just, I don't know, man. I don't know. He's not a good fantasy quarterback. That's the way it is. Certain games he is, but in that division that he's in, he's going to have a lot of down games. And he's going to lose you weeks, man. And when the weather gets bad, Tua gets bad, end of the year, he's not been showing up for fantasy football playoffs. I don't see him as a quarterback one. It's so crazy. I think he is a quarterback one situationally. It's almost like Baker Mayfield, man. All right, everybody, that is the show. Thank you so much for watching. If you disagree with something that I said, which I'm sure you did, because, hey, man, that's what makes fantasy football great, especially when you're ranking like 20 people, man. There are so many different ideas. Let me know, man. My mind can change given new information. If you agree with me, give me a hell yeah in the comments. Hopefully I earned a thumbs up. Hopefully I earned a subscription. If you are not already subscribed, please subscribe. We need your support. We want this show to blow up, be the biggest goddamn fantasy football show on YouTube. We'll stay the same, man, in this garage. I might put AC here if I ever get paid. But hey, man, we need support, and that starts with you right now, subscribing. This is Tyler, Big Turd Ward, and I appreciate you.